Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we have an 8-game Major League Baseball slate for the main slate. This slate starts at 7 p.m. It's a fairly solid slate today. I think it's got some really good options across the board. Pitching is definitely suspect today, but we do have good plays across the board. I do have some core plays for you. Ketel Marte, Jeremy Pena, and then Michael Harris on DraftKings. And over on FanDuel, I have Strider, Marte, and Bregman. With that said, we're going to get into this thing. Before I get started, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? Also, drop a comment below with your home run calls, and I'll follow you out tomorrow if you get one correct. So let's go and get in our pitchers here for DraftKings. We're going to start with Spencer Strider. Now, he's in a tough matchup against Baltimore, who's a pretty good team. But Strider's got the best upside on the slate by a large margin. His strikeout rate is just off the charts so far this season. He's had his worst game was 8 strikeouts, which was the last game. Even then, he gave up 4 earned runs, and he still scored 18 fantasy points. That is his absolute floor this year so far, and he's got big-time upside here. Baltimore does strike out decently, so he's definitely got a great option. He's almost a lock here as a core play, just because the matchup is not ideal. I didn't make him a lock on DraftKings, especially because there's more good options here than there are on FanDuel. Moving on to Alex Cobb for San Francisco. He has got a tough matchup here against Milwaukee, and he is somewhat inconsistent, but he does have some upside. He's a good P2 option. He's one of the few guys on the slate that have shutout potential, and that said, he's giving up a couple runs, most likely, but he should be able to be a top 5 pitcher today with the decent strikeouts and stuff like that. Then Blake Snell, he is in play today for San Diego. Now, this is a high risk, high reward, playing against the Dodgers. Not an ideal matchup, but he's capable here. He had several good games against Dodgers last season. In fact, in 3 or 4 games, he was really solid. So I do think he's got some nice upside, even though it's a tough matchup. And he's priced pretty fairly, and he's a good contrarian option off a Strider. Then we'll look at France for Houston. Now, he's high risk, high reward. He is a Hail Mary play, but he's also uber cheap, and he has really good stuff. In the minors, he had a really good K rate. Also a K to rock rate, and he pitched well, had a pretty good ERA. I think he's got some interesting upside here. Isn't an ideal matchup, but again, if you can get a guy that can get a few, 5 or 6 strikeouts in 5 innings and not give up more than a run, then that could definitely pay off today, especially at his inexpensive price at just $5,200. Then we'll look at Nathan Eovaldi. Now, I really actually kind of like him today against the Angels, though I do like some of the Angels players today. He's actually a pretty decent play, and he's got some good upside. He hasn't been particularly great so far this season, but he's okay, and he's had good. He's got some potential here. His price makes him a little bit annoying to roster, but he's definitely somebody as a GPP play, especially on the slate. So let's go ahead and move into our catchers and first baseman. Now, I like Salvador Perez again today, who was decent yesterday. He didn't have a huge game, but he did score some fantasy points yesterday, and I expect him to have just as much upside today, if not more than he had yesterday, in a great matchup against Oakland. So he's a definitely core play almost. And then MJ Melendez is also in play, though he's higher risk than Perez is, but he's definitely got some potential here. Blake Sabal for San Francisco is in play. This is a toughish matchup for him, but I do think he's got some good upside, and he has good ISO for this situation. He's also already hit 5 home runs this year, which is pretty good, especially considering he doesn't play every day or anything, and he's got some really good potential here. Then if he does draw the start. And he could also play in the outfield. Another guy to consider is Jonah Heim. He's somebody to consider on the slate. Moving into first base, we have Ohtani, who is extremely expensive, but he has really good upside, though I do think Eovaldi is a decent play. One guy that could definitely hit a home run off of him is Ohtani, obviously Trout as well. And then Passaquanto for Kansas City. I think Kansas City is a great team to kind of look at today. Got some really good opportunity throughout this lineup and a good stackable team. He's got some really nice upside here. He's priced fairly, and he's been playing really well. Joey Menendez is also in play for Washington as a cheap play. He hasn't been as good this season as I expected him to be so far, and he is getting a strikeout just about every game, but he is hitting the ball decently well, and he has some power. I think maybe he's just trying to swing for fences too much. I'm not sure exactly what the issue is that he's had so far this year, but he definitely has some upside, and his price is so reduced now that he's definitely in play with that potential. Some other guys to consider at this position: Jose Abreu, Ryan Noda, Matt Olson at first base are all in play on the slate. Then we'll look at Marte, second base. Ketel Marte for Arizona. I really do like his upside today. He's been extremely good lately. He's had 3 16 or better fantasy point games the last 5 games. He's got home run potential. He's been hitting really well, and so I really like his upside. Then we'll look at Dubon for Houston. Now, he's very high risk, high reward here. He hasn't hit the ball badly. He doesn't have the power necessarily, and he hasn't been particularly great, only 6 for 29 for a little while. But he does have some metrics that give his favor. I really don't like this position today. I think Marte is a must play because of it, but he is somebody to consider as a value play. Colton Wong is also a value play, though high risk, high reward. He has not hit the ball that well yet this season, but he's had 4 straight games with hits, and he's actually starting to get some good fantasy points going. And if he can continue that, then he'll become a pretty good play, especially at his price. And so I really like the upside in the matchup. And then another guy to mention is Kiki Hernandez. He's also considered option for this position. Maybe into third base. I think third base is one of the deepest positions today. Josh Jung for Texas. He would be core play over here on DraftKings if it weren't for the fact that there's so many good options at this position. But he is priced pretty good. He's got nice upside, home run potential, and he obviously has the biggest floor, even though he's got a really, his ceiling is lower, but his floor is higher than anybody else on the slate. Looking at Alex Bregman, he looks like a really solid option if you can afford him today. He hasn't hit the ball particularly great this season, but he started to hit the ball well the last few games. I like his upside here and the matchup, and so I think he's in play. JD Davis for San Francisco is also in play here. He's hitting the ball really well so far this season. He's got some really nice upside. He's been hitting home runs. He's got good potential here. His price has come up some, but it's back down a little bit. And so I really like this potential in this matchup, especially in a very plus matchup. And then you could also consider Austin Riley and Miguel Garcia. Garcia I'll talk about in outfield. Moving into the shortstops, we'll look at Jeremy Pena, who is a must-play today at this position. This position is just awful today. He looks like he's in a really good spot, even though he hadn't hit the ball particularly great. I typically like certain guys in certain situations, and he is in a position like that where I just think he's in a great spot to have a good game. You could also consider Mookie Betts, Xander Bogaerts, and Kiki Hernandez here as well. Moving into the outfielders, we have quite a few good options here. But Bryce Harper is a great play today. He is expensive and somewhat hard to roster, and he hasn't hit a home run yet, but he's only played 3 games so far, and he's hitting the ball pretty well so far. He had 3 hits in the second game, and then had a hit against Boston. I look for him to have a really good opportunity here to have a big game. I like his upside and his potential. Mike Trout is also in play. A little bit riskier, but he does have the home run potential, and he's been hitting the ball pretty decently as of late. He's also getting on base and doing stuff, so I really like the upside there. And then Juan Soto, I think he's a good contrarian option to Harper if you want, though he isn't hitting the ball quite as well as some other guys. The last 5 or 6 games, he's been on target, and so that batting average should start coming up now. And he hasn't even been hitting, home runs really, by where he's doing that. He's getting lots of doubles, getting RBIs, getting walked, and so I really like his potential here in this matchup. Michael Harris is also a core play. Now, it is risky because he may not play today, but if he does play, he should be somebody I would roster. He has a really good potential here. Great matchup for him and nice upside as a result. Rob Refsnyder for Boston also in play today. Very cheap here. Kind of a boomer bust play, but has some nice potential. When he does draw a start, which he doesn't all the time, he tends to do decently, and I like his potential in this situation. Lane Thomas is also in play for Washington. I really like him a lot today. He's hitting the ball pretty solidly so far this season. He's got good power potential, and even though he hasn't got but 2 home runs this season, when he does play, I really think he has good potential here. He also has some stolen base upside, which gives him an added bonus, and he's just too cheap to ignore. Lamont Wade Jr. is also in play for San Francisco. He's hitting the ball pretty well. Not the best batting average, but he's hitting some home runs, and he's got good potential in a plus matchup today, and I really do like a San Francisco stack. Then we'll look at Taylor Ward, who has been less than ideal so far this season, but he does feel like he's starting to get going the last 4 games or so, and I really like his upside. He's got home run potential here, and I think he's a viable option. And then Mikhail Garcia for Kansas City. He's a near minimum price play. He's high risk, high reward, but he's hitting the ball pretty well, and he played well against in AAA as well. And so I think he's got some really good opportunity here. Not only that, but he has stolen base potential, which gives a nice added bonus at this position or in the third base position as well. So other guys to consider: Robbie Grossman, Jock Peterson, Nick Castellanos, and Brett Roker. So moving on to FanDuel here, we're going to start with our pitchers. Now I think Strider is almost a must-play today. He just has all the crazy upside you could want on a slate like this, where none of the top pitchers really have great matchups. He is a core play to me, but if you wanted to go off of him, and you don't really have to because there's so much value here on FanDuel, so it's definitely capable of building really good lineups with him in the lineup. As you can see with him at $11,400, I have 3,000-ish plays, and I still have $2,900 per player. And you're going to see as I go through here, there's plenty of options to fit in here. But if you wanted to pay down some, Alex Cobb and Blake Snell are the best 2 options in my opinion. Even though they have tough matchups, they have the most upside here. And Nathan Eovaldi is also somewhat in play as well. So then we'll move into our catchers and first basemen. We're going to start with Bryce Harper here. Though he's fairly expensive, I do think he has home run potential in this game, has nice upside, and is definitely a guy that I would consider if I can roster him. Vinny Pasquantino for Kansas City is in play today. He's got some really good upside, hitting the ball really well lately, and I think his upside is too much to ignore in a very plus matchup. Joey Menendez for Washington, also a great option today. He's also priced down quite a bit. High risk, high reward here, but he's got the good upside. And then if you're just desperate to throw a catcher in this position, Salvador Perez would be my favorite option. He's got home run potential here, hitting the ball well, and I like the potential. Moving into second base, we're going to start with, let's see here. We're going to start with Ketel Marte, at $3,200, he is a core play, mostly due to his price here, and because he's got massive home run potential in this matchup. Then we'll look at Dubon for Houston, who I don't love, but it's just not much at this position. He's priced really cheap, and that gives him some upside. And then also Colton Wong, who hasn't hit the ball that well this season, but he does have some potential in this matchup, and at some point he hopefully will start to get going, and this would be not a bad spot to do so. Moving to third base, Josh Jung is a good play today. He is hard to roster on on FanDuel because of the price, and the fact that he's a very boomer bust guy. He's got a low floor but a high ceiling so far this season. Bregman is also in play today, who I think is a core play due to his price just being way too cheap, and he's got really nice potential here. I know his batting average isn't great, but he's got nice upside, and I think that he's too hard to ignore based on this price. J.D. Davis also in play as a home run hitter. He's hit the ball really well this season, and he's got some nice upside. He's been kind of slumpy lately, but I do think he's going to break out of it here in this game. And then Evan Longoria for Arizona. He's kind of a sneaky play today with some upside, though he is boomer bust, but he's almost minimum priced. Moving into the shortstop position, we're going to start with Garcia for Kansas City, Mikhail Garcia, who has shortstop potential here. He's got stolen base potential and good hitting stuff. He's also managing to get on base every single game so far with hits in every game, and with that gives us a really good upside. Not only that, he's super cheap and helps you pay up for other options if you want, but Jeremy Pena is a good option here at shortstop as well. Obviously has good home run potential today. He's not always the best hitter, but he does have some nice metrics for this matchup, and so he is viable here. And then Xander Bogaerts, if you want to pay up at this position, he would probably be the best option to do so with his good upside in this particular matchup. Maybe in the outfielders, we have Bryce Harper, again, who's at first base as well, and he's a great option. Trout is in play, but he's high risk, high reward due to the fact that he's got a tougher matchup at pitcher, but he still has home run potential every time out, and his price, while it is super high, he is rosterable here. Juan Soto has really started to get going lately. I like his upside. His price is pretty good here, too, and it makes him very rosterable. Michael Harris is also in play if he draws the start. He's got a really good potential in this matchup. The metrics are jumping off the charts for him today. And then Kyle Schwarber. Schwarber for Philly. His price is cheap enough over here. He is a boomer bust guy when it comes to hitting a home run. He typically just doesn't do much else. But when he does hit home runs, he pays off really nicely, and he's got some good potential today for that. Rob Refsnyder, also in play today for Boston, even though he's kind of a boomer bust play as well. He's very minimum price, helps you pay up other positions. And then Lane Thomas, who is just a great play on the slate, I think. He's got some really nice upside. He's hitting the ball decently well lately, and he's got some good potential here. So with that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below, and have a nice day, guys.